Western capital markets have reached a unified consensus. India is the designated successor to China's manufacturing dominance. Multinational corporations are pouring billions into the country, expecting a democratic safe haven that can seamlessly anchor the next generation of global supply chains under the China Plus One strategy. China Plus One is a business approach where companies diversify their investments and supply chains by adding alternative production locations outside of China. Cold strategic analysis reveals a different mechanism at play. India does not view itself as a passive, obedient ally to Western interests. Instead, it operates through the extraction of geopolitical rent. Geopolitical rent is the economic and diplomatic value a nation extracts purely from its strategic location and the rivalries of larger powers, rather than from its own direct production or innovation. The country's current economic expansion is driven by a high-stakes combination of extreme state-sponsored nationalism and aggressive opportunity-seeking. Beneath the headline GDP figures lies a severe demographic reality. India possesses over 800 million citizens of working age. On a national balance sheet, a population of this size requires hundreds of millions of stable, entry-level industrial jobs. Without them, this demographic dividend becomes a compounding liability. Global capital has built its supply chain strategy on a romanticized assumption of democratic partnership. That assumption completely ignores the aggressive nature of India's external diplomacy and the deep structural fractures within its domestic economy. India's primary leverage is an asset that cannot be replicated or engineered, its sheer geographic scale and its specific location on the Asian continent. On its northern front, India maintains a massive physical standoff with the Chinese military in the Himalayas. This active territorial dispute anchors the hopes of Western strategists looking for a regional counterbalance to Beijing. On its southern front, the Indian peninsula projects deep into the Indian Ocean, looming directly over the shipping lanes that feed the Malacca Strait. A massive percentage of global trade and energy must pass through this critical maritime choke point. This dual-front positioning, threatening China by land and monitoring its energy supply by sea, forces the United States to place India at the absolute center of its Indo-Pacific strategy. India weaponizes this geographic necessity to extract deep concessions. By participating in the Quad, a formal strategic security dialogue between the United States, India, Japan, and Australia, India secures access to advanced Western technology, intelligence sharing, and military hardware. The government demands all the economic and technological benefits of a Western alliance, while explicitly refusing to bind itself to any mutual defense treaties or international mandates that would restrict its own autonomy. This refusal to accept a subordinate role is most obvious in global energy markets. When Western nations imposed comprehensive financial sanctions on Russia, India ignored the mandates and aggressively purchased millions of barrels of heavily discounted Russian crude oil. The raw crude is shipped directly to massive domestic facilities, where it is refined into diesel and jet fuel. India exports this newly refined fuel straight back to the European nations that sanctioned Russian oil, capturing a massive markup. This arbitrage loophole perfectly balances geopolitical friction, feeding Russian revenues, supplying American-led markets, and securing its own energy independence. This is geopolitical extraction functioning at peak efficiency. The state intercepts the economic fallout of great power conflict and diverts the profits directly into its own treasury. Global executives arrive in India expecting a massive, open consumer market, ready to absorb their products and host their next-generation factories. The Indian government actively courts this investment because it requires rapid domestic industrialization. However, the state utilizes extreme protectionist tactics to ensure the ultimate ownership of these industries remains local. The first phase is attraction. Multinational corporations such as Taiwanese electronics manufacturer Wistron are offered incentives to pour vast amounts of capital into physical infrastructure and factory construction on Indian soil. Once the factories are operational and the capital is sunk, the bureaucratic environment tightens. Foreign companies, including heavyweights like Xiaomi and Vivo, suddenly face severe judicial pressure, hit with massive fines and asset freezes over allegations of tax evasion or foreign exchange violations. Faced with frozen bank accounts and operational paralysis, These multinationals are forced to sell off their newly built factories at fire sale prices to powerful, politically connected domestic conglomerates like the Tata Group. For foreign capital, the China Plus One strategy functions as a highly effective trap. It is a state-sanctioned mechanism designed to absorb international capital and technology only to cannibalize the resulting assets for local billionaires. Beyond aggressive corporate extraction, the physical reality of manufacturing in India presents insurmountable roadblocks to building an independent supply chain. Heavy industry requires massive, continuous tracts of land. India's private land ownership system is highly fragmented, tying up basic infrastructure development, like freight railways and deep-water ports, in decades of localized legal disputes. Manufacturers must also navigate a deeply inefficient cross-state tax bureaucracy and rely on a labor pool that largely lacks baseline technical training for precision manufacturing. Consequently, the facilities operating in India today are not replacing China's high-tech manufacturing ecosystems. They function primarily as low-end, manual assembly frontlines. These assembly lines cannot produce the critical internal hardware they put together. They remain entirely dependent on a continuous volume of complex components imported directly from Chinese factories. The structural and physical constraints of the country render the ambition of a fully independent, alternate global supply chain impossible under current conditions. This inability to build a deep, domestic, heavy industry base directly compromises India's national security and shatters the perception of its autonomous defense capabilities. India maintains one of the largest standing armies on the planet, yet it lacks a sovereign military-industrial complex capable of outfitting those troops. As a result, it is the world's largest importer of foreign weapons. The Indian Air Force operates a deeply fragmented fleet. Mechanics must simultaneously service French-built Rafale fighters right alongside fleets of Russian-made Sukhois. The naval fleet faces the same hardware division, relying heavily on the INS Vikramaditya, a retrofitted Soviet-era aircraft carrier purchased from Russia and heavily modified. Operating a catalog military sourced from rival nations creates a catastrophic logistical burden. Every single platform requires completely different tooling, separate ammunition standards, and entirely distinct supply chains for replacement parts. In a high-intensity, prolonged conflict, a military stitched together from foreign suppliers is highly vulnerable. If a single provider halts the shipment of specialized spare parts, vast segments of this patchwork arsenal will be completely paralyzed. While external military dependencies pose a severe risk, the far more volatile threat to the Indian state is erupting internally. The economy is currently experiencing jobless growth. Jobless growth is a macroeconomic phenomenon where an economy expands its financial output without a corresponding increase in employment opportunities. Without an expansive manufacturing sector to absorb labor, a workforce of 800 million people transitions from a national asset to a devastating liability. Wealth generation is highly concentrated at the absolute top of the economic ladder. The nation's lucrative IT and software services sector drives immense capital gains, but it employs only a microscopic fraction of the overall population. This leaves hundreds of millions of rural, undereducated citizens entirely locked out of the digital economy, competing fiercely for stagnant, low-wage physical labor. The result is an escalating societal pressure cooker. Record-high youth unemployment is now violently colliding with the entrenched structural inequalities of the remaining caste system. The moment headline GDP growth begins to falter, this massive, idle demographic will reach a breaking point, threatening to tear the nation's social fabric apart from the inside. India has exhibited undeniable tactical brilliance. It has survived the immense geopolitical tension between Washington, Beijing, and Moscow, actively pitting global superpowers against one another to extract maximum national wealth. But this grand strategic ambition sits precariously atop a deeply flawed foundation. The state is attempting to project global power using a hollow industrial base and a fracturing, highly unequal society. Executing the two-headed snake strategy requires absolute, unwavering internal stability. It requires a unified state apparatus, a condition that a severely unemployed, restive population simply cannot guarantee. The core question is no longer whether India can attract foreign capital or broker advantageous oil deals. It is a question of endurance. How long can the state sustain this aggressive diplomatic balancing act before the internal pressures exceed containment? Walking the geopolitical tightrope yields massive, immediate returns, but the longer the walk continues without a solid economic floor beneath it, the more catastrophic the inevitable fall.